I discovered my 4-year-old son Jake had a rare form of leukemia, requiring an experimental treatment costing $65,000 not covered by insurance. Desperate, I called my wealthy parents who just spent $540,000 on my sister Brittany's lavish wedding. Their cold refusal left me stunned. We have already allocated our finances for the year. As Jake's condition worsened, I faced the unthinkable choice between bankruptcy and watching my son die. Little did I know this betrayal would transform me forever. My name is Wilbur Hartley, a 32-year-old middle school science teacher in Millfield, Massachusetts. Not the most exciting life, perhaps, but it was mine, and I loved it. My wife Amanda and I met in college, fell madly in love, and got married right after graduation. She became a nurse at the local hospital, while I pursued my passion for education. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom house that needed constant repairs, but it was our home, filled with love and laughter. For years, we struggled with infertility. The monthly disappointments nearly broke us, but somehow made our marriage stronger. Then, after almost giving up hope, our miracle happened. Jake was born healthy and perfect, with Amanda's bright blue eyes and my unruly brown hair. The first time I held him, I made a silent promise that I would always protect him, that nothing bad would ever happen to him if I could help it. How quickly life tests such promises. We weren't wealthy by any means. Teaching and nursing salaries in a small town meant living paycheck to paycheck, especially with the remaining medical bills from our fertility treatments. But watching Jake grow into a curious, gentle 3-year-old, then 4-year-old, filled our lives with purpose and joy. The financial struggles seemed trivial compared to the richness he brought us. My parents, Harold and Dorothy Hartley, lived just 30 minutes away in a sprawling mansion overlooking the lake. They owned Hartley Real Estate, the largest property development company in the county. Growing up, I never wanted for material things, but emotional support was another matter. From as early as I can remember, my younger sister Brittany was the golden child. The pretty one, the charming one, the one with the business mind who would someday take over the family company. I was always an afterthought. When I chose teaching over joining the family business, my father barely spoke to me for months. My mother tried to maintain a relationship, but it was strained at best. They attended my wedding, but complained about the simple ceremony. When Jake was born, they sent an expensive gift but visited only twice in 4 years. Then Brittany got engaged to Tyler Williams, son of a wealthy businessman who owned a chain of luxury hotels. Suddenly, my parents were planning the wedding of the century. Every time we reluctantly visited, it was all they talked about. The 500-person guest list, the famous chef flown in from New York, the custom-designed dress from Paris, the exclusive venue booked for an entire weekend. I tried to be happy for my sister. Brittany and I were never close, but she wasn't cruel, just spoiled. She seemed genuinely excited about the wedding, showing me pictures of flower arrangements and table settings that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I smiled and nodded, thinking of the leaking roof we couldn't afford to fix and the second-hand clothes Jake wore. Then came the first signs something wasn't right. Jake started getting unusual bruises from minor bumps. He seemed tired all the time, uninterested in playing with his toys or going to preschool. When he developed a fever that wouldn't break, Amanda's nursing instincts kicked in. We took him to his pediatrician, Dr. Morris, who ordered blood tests. I'll never forget sitting in that small examination room, Amanda holding Jake on her lap while Dr. Morris explained the initial results. His face was kind but serious, as he told us Jake's blood counts were abnormal, but it might just be anemia or an infection. We should see a specialist to be sure, but try not to worry too much yet. We left the office with a referral and a temporary sense of relief. Anemia was treatable. This would be okay. Our boy would be fine. That night, as Jake slept between us in our bed because he was still feverish, Amanda whispered, "I think we should call your parents, just to let them know what's happening." I nodded, though a knot formed in my stomach. "I'll call tomorrow," I promised, not knowing that this would be the last moment of innocence before our world shattered completely. 3 days later, we sat in Dr. Lenore Chen's office at Boston Children's Hospital as she confirmed our worst fears. Jake had a rare and aggressive form of acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The standard chemotherapy protocols had less than a 40% success rate for his particular genetic markers. "There is hope, though," Dr. Chen said, sliding a folder across her desk. "A new treatment protocol is showing excellent results in children with this specific subtype. It combines targeted immunotherapy with modified chemotherapy agents." Amanda gripped my hand so tightly I lost feeling in my fingers. "What's the success rate?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Early results show 80 to 90% remission," Dr. Chen replied. "But I need to be upfront with you about two things. First, we need to start treatment within 4 to 6 weeks for optimal results. And second, because it's still in clinical trials, most insurance plans won't cover it." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "What's the cost?" I asked, already dreading the answer. $65,000, Dr. Chen said quietly. "I wish I had better news about the financial aspect. There are some foundations that might help, but their application processes take time, which is something Jake doesn't have much of right now." I looked through the glass partition where Jake sat in a play area, a child life specialist helping him build a tower of blocks. He looked so small, so perfect. How could his body be betraying him like this? How could we possibly find that kind of money in time? The drive home was silent except for Jake's occasional questions from the back seat. "Why do I have to get more pokes?" he asked, referring to the additional blood draws. The nurse said, "I was so brave." "You are brave, buddy," I said, meeting his eyes in the rearview mirror. "The bravest boy I know." That night, after Jake went to sleep, Amanda and I sat at our kitchen table surrounded by financial documents. Our savings account held just over $8,000. Our credit cards were nearly maxed out from previous medical bills. The equity in our home wasn't enough for a second mortgage. "What about your parents?" Amanda asked gently. "I know things are strained, but surely for their grandson." I nodded, hope flickering for the first time since the diagnosis. My parents had money. Lots of money. They were spending over $500,000 on Brittany's wedding. Surely they could help save their only grandchild. The next day, we received a call from Brittany. "Mom says, 'You're coming to dinner on Friday. Is everything okay? You never come to family dinners anymore.'" "Jake's been sick," I said vaguely. "We'll be there." Friday night arrived, and we dressed Jake in his nicest clothes. He was having a good day. The steroids the doctors had started him on temporarily boosting his energy. My mother fussed over him when we arrived, though she complained when he didn't want to hug her. My father barely looked up from his phone. Dinner was torture. My parents and Brittany talked endlessly about wedding details. The custom champagne bottles with Brittany and Tyler's faces. The ice sculpture of Cupid that would cost $5,000 and melt by midnight. The specially bred roses that had to be flown in from Ecuador. So the final catering bill came in. My father announced proudly, $98,000 for the reception dinner alone, but worth every penny for the caviar station. I pushed my food around my plate, feeling sick. Jake sat beside me, barely touching his meal. Amanda kept a forced smile plastered on her face. After dinner, while Brittany was showing Amanda her latest wedding purchases, I overheard my parents in the study. The door was slightly ajar, and I couldn't help stopping to listen. "Harold, are you sure about the villa?" my mother was saying. $100,000 seems excessive, even for a wedding present. "Dorothy, nothing is too good for our Brittany. Besides, it's a solid investment property." "And did you see Tyler's father's face when I mentioned it?" The man finally looked impressed. I stood frozen, anger and disbelief washing over me. $100,000 wedding gift on top of the $540,000 wedding. And Jake's life hung in the balance for lack of $65,000. As we drove home that night, the contrast between my parents' extravagance and our desperate situation became unbearably clear. I had to try. For Jake, I had to swallow my pride and ask them directly for help. I just never imagined how cruel their refusal would be. I spent the entire weekend preparing my approach. I gathered all of Jake's medical records, printed information about the treatment protocol, and even prepared a payment plan to show my parents we would eventually pay them back every penny. Amanda offered to come with me, but I knew this was something I needed to do alone. Monday morning, I called in sick to work, and drove to my parents' house. My mother answered the door in tennis clothes, clearly surprised to see me. "Wilbur? What are you doing here?" "I was just leaving for my match." "Mom, I need to talk to you and Dad. It's important. It's about Jake." Something in my voice must have conveyed the severity because she let me in without further protest. "Harold's in his office. I'll get him." I sat in their formal living room, surrounded by expensive art and furniture that had always seemed untouchable to me as a child. Family photos lined one wall, and I noticed with a pang that pictures of Brittany outnumbered mine at least 3-1. There was only one small photo of Jake, taken the day he was born. My father entered the room, looking annoyed at the interruption. "This better be important, Wilbur. I have a conference call in 30 minutes. "It's Jake," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "He's very sick." I explained the diagnosis, the treatment options, the timeline. I showed them the medical records and the information about the experimental protocol. I watched their faces for signs of concern, of the grandparental love I desperately needed to see. "That's terrible," my mother said, and for a moment I felt hope rise in my chest. "But I'm sure the regular treatments will work just fine. Doctors always try to upsell, you know." "Mom, this isn't about upselling," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "This is about Jake's best chance. The standard treatments have a much lower success rate with his specific type of leukemia." My father was looking through the papers I'd brought. $65,000 is a lot of money, Wilbur. "Have you looked into assistance programs?" "Yes, but they take time to process applications, and Jake doesn't have time. The treatment needs to start in the next month for the best results." I took a deep breath. "I know you're spending a lot on Brittany's wedding, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't literally life or death. I just need $65,000. I'll pay you back over time, with interest if you want." My father's face hardened. "We've already allocated our finances for the year, Wilbur. The wedding expenses have been planned for months. We can't just pull money out of thin air." I stared at him in disbelief. "Dad, you just spent over $500,000 on a wedding, and you're about to spend another $100,000 on a honeymoon villa. This is your grandson's life we're talking about." "Don't take that tone with me," my father snapped. "Your sister's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. We've been saving for it since she was born. And Jake only gets one lifetime," I shouted, losing my composure. "He's 4 years old." My mother put her hand on my father's arm. "Wilbur, please try to understand. We have commitments. Contracts have been signed. Deposits have been paid. So cancel something. Downgrade the flowers or the ice sculpture or the gold-plated party favors." I was on my feet now, my whole body shaking. "How can you possibly justify spending all that money on a party when Jake might die without this treatment?" "You've always been jealous of your sister," my father said coldly. "Always resented what we did for her. And now you're trying to use your son's illness to manipulate us." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "How dare you?" I whispered. "How dare you suggest I would use Jake's cancer for manipulation?" "Well, it is convenient timing, isn't it?" my mother said. "Just when Brittany's big day is coming up, suddenly you need this enormous sum of money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These people, my parents, were suggesting I was making up or exaggerating my son's illness out of jealousy. In that moment, I realized just how broken our family truly was. "Please," I said, doing something I had never done before. I got down on my knees in front of them. "Please help Jake. He's your grandson. He's innocent in all of this. I'm begging you." My parents exchanged an uncomfortable look. Finally, my father sighed. "Look, Wilbur, even if we wanted to help, which I'm not saying we do, there's something you're not considering." "What's that?" I asked, a last desperate hope flickering. "Well, this cancer. It's probably from Amanda's side, isn't it? There's no history of it in our family. If her genetics are the problem, why should we be financially responsible?" The room went completely silent. I slowly got to my feet, a cold rage replacing my desperation. "My son is dying," I said quietly. "And you're worried about whose fault it is? Jake has done nothing wrong. Nothing. He's a little boy, fighting for his life. And you're his grandparents, and you're refusing to help him because you'd rather spend money on a party, and because you think his cancer might be from his mother's genes?" Don't twist my words, my father started, but I cut him off. I'm leaving now, I said, gathering the medical papers with shaking hands. And I want you to know something. Whatever happens to Jake, whether he lives or dies, I will never forgive you for this moment. Never. I walked out of their house feeling like I'd aged a decade in an hour. My last hope for saving Jake had just been crushed by the people who should have cared the most. I sat in my car and wept before driving home to tell Amanda that we were completely on our own. I arrived home to find Amanda sitting at our kitchen table with a pile of medical bills in front of her. The hope in her eyes when I walked in quickly faded as she saw my expression. They said no, I said simply, collapsing into a chair opposite her. Amanda reached across the table and took my hands. Tell me everything. As I recounted the conversation, Amanda's face went from shocked to hurt to angry. By the time I told her about my father's comment regarding her genetics, her hands had balled into fists. Those people, she said, her voice tight with fury. Those heartless, selfish people. Jake came into the kitchen then, dragging his favorite stuffed dinosaur. He looked paler than he had that morning, dark circles under his eyes, making him look much older than 4. Daddy, my tummy hurts, he said quietly. I lifted him onto my lap, feeling how light he'd become. I know, buddy. Should we read your favorite book? The one about the astronaut dog? As I carried Jake to the living room, Amanda mouthed, "I'll call Dr. Chen," and reached for the phone. 3 hours later, we were back at the hospital. Jake's blood counts had dropped dramatically, and he needed a transfusion. We were told he would need to stay overnight for observation. Amanda called her supervisor and arranged to take emergency family leave. I did the same with my school principal, who was immediately supportive. Take whatever time you need, Wilbur, she said. We'll work it out. That night, as Jake finally slept in the hospital bed, attached to monitors and IVs, Amanda and I had a quiet conversation that would change everything. We need to tell people, Amanda said. We've been trying to handle this privately, but we can't do it alone. I nodded, exhaustion making it hard to form words. But who would help us with this kind of money? Everyone, Amanda said firmly. My colleagues at the hospital, your fellow teachers, our friends, our church, everyone we know, giving what they can. It might not be enough, but we have to try. The next day, while Amanda stayed with Jake, I went home to shower and change clothes. When I checked my phone, I had a text message from Brittany. At the hospital, need to see you and Jake. Room number? I stared at the screen in disbelief. How did Brittany even know Jake was in the hospital? I texted back the room number, curious and wary about what she wanted. When I returned to the hospital, Brittany was sitting in the waiting area near Jake's room. She looked uncharacteristically disheveled, her designer clothes wrinkled as if she'd slept in them. What are you doing here? I asked, more bluntly than I'd intended. Brittany stood up. Mom mentioned you'd been by yesterday about Jake being sick. She made it sound like it wasn't serious, but something felt off. So I called Amanda's hospital and pretended to be her sister to find out if Jake had been admitted. You lied to get medical information? For a good cause, she said defensively. And I was right. He's really sick, isn't he? Amanda told me everything while you were gone. Leukemia? Wilbur? Why didn't you tell me? I sighed, too tired for this conversation. We've been a little busy dealing with the diagnosis and treatment options. And Mom and Dad refused to help? With the money for the special treatment? Brittany looked genuinely shocked. That can't be right. There must be a misunderstanding. I laughed bitterly. No misunderstanding. They made it perfectly clear that your wedding takes priority over Jake's life. Brittany paled. That's not. They wouldn't. They did. I started to walk past her toward Jake's room, but she grabbed my arm. Wait. I need to see him. Please, Wilbur. He's my nephew. Something in her voice made me pause. Unlike our parents, Brittany had always been kind to Jake on the few occasions they'd met. She sent birthday gifts and Christmas presents, though she rarely visited. Fine, I said, but he's weak and tired, so don't stay long. Brittany followed me into Jake's room. Amanda looked up from where she sat beside the bed, surprise crossing her face. Jake was awake, watching a cartoon on the small hospital TV. Aunt Brittany, he said, his voice small but excited. Did you bring Dinosaur? Dinosaur was a stuffed T-Rex that Brittany had given Jake for his last birthday. It had quickly become one of his favorites. "Not today, buddy," Brittany said, approaching the bed cautiously. "But I can bring him next time, okay?" Jake nodded, then turned his attention back to the TV. Brittany stood awkwardly for a moment, then turned to Amanda. "Can I talk to you and Wilbur in the hall?" Once outside, Brittany took a deep breath. "I had no idea how serious this was. Mom just said Jake was under the weather, and you were overreacting." "Overreacting?" Amanda repeated incredulously. "Our son has cancer." "I know that now," Brittany said quickly. "And I can't believe my parents would refuse to help. That wedding money? It's insane. I never asked for such an extravagant event. It's all for show, all for their rich friends and business connections." I studied my sister's face, trying to determine if she was sincere. "What are you saying, Brittany?" "I'm saying I want to help," she replied, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal her engagement ring. The diamond was enormous, at least 3 carats, with smaller diamonds surrounding it. "Tyler gave me this. It's worth about $70,000. I want you to take it. Sell it and use the money for Jake's treatment." Amanda gasped. "Brittany, we can't let you do that. Your fiancé." "I'll deal with Tyler," Brittany said firmly. "I'll tell him I lost it. Or it was stolen. Or maybe I'll tell him the truth, that I gave it up to save my nephew's life. If he loves me, he'll understand. If he doesn't," she shrugged, "then I shouldn't be marrying him anyway." I was speechless. This was a side of Brittany I'd never seen before. My spoiled little sister, offering to give up her expensive engagement ring to help save Jake. "Why?" I finally managed to ask. "Why would you do this?" Brittany's eyes filled with tears. "Because he's family, Wilbur. Because Mom and Dad have always favored me. And I've always known it. And I've never done anything to stop it. Because I've been selfish, wrapped up in my perfect life while you and Amanda struggle." She wiped her eyes. "Mostly because Jake deserves a chance to grow up, and if Mom and Dad won't help, then I will." Before I could respond, a nurse hurried up to us. "Mr. and Mrs. Hartley? Jake's running a fever. The doctor is coming to check on him." As we rushed back into the room, the reality of our situation hit me anew. Jake was getting sicker, and time was running out. But for the first time since the diagnosis, I felt a small spark of hope. Not because of Brittany's ring, though her offer had touched me deeply, but because I realized we weren't as alone as I'd thought. That night, after Jake's fever had been brought under control and Brittany had gone home with a promise to return the next day, Amanda made a series of phone calls. By morning, word had spread through both our workplaces. By afternoon, a GoFundMe page had been set up by Amanda's nursing supervisor. By evening, the community of Millfield had mobilized in a way I never could have imagined. Teachers from my school started a meal train. Parents of my students organized a fundraising car wash. Amanda's fellow nurses contributed from their own tight budgets. Our elderly neighbor offered to mow our lawn while we were at the hospital. The local diner put a donation jar on their counter. It wasn't just money. It was people showing up, people caring, people refusing to let a child suffer if they could do anything to prevent it. As we watched the fundraiser slowly grow, one small donation at a time, I realized something profound. My wealthy parents had refused to help their own grandson, but strangers were emptying their wallets to save a boy they'd never met. The contrast couldn't have been more stark or more telling. 3 weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms, doctor consultations, and community fundraisers. Jake was admitted to the hospital full-time as his condition deteriorated. The standard medications were buying time, but not enough. The fundraising had reached just over $40,000, still well short of what we needed for the experimental treatment. Brittany visited every few days, always bringing small gifts for Jake and updates on the wedding plans that she now seemed to regard with a mixture of embarrassment and resentment. She hadn't sold her ring yet, waiting to see if our fundraising would reach the goal first. "The wedding is this Saturday," she told me during one visit. "I want you to be there." I shook my head. "I can't leave Jake. Just for a few hours," she pleaded. "Amanda's mother can stay with him." "It would mean a lot to me, Wilbur. I need someone sane in my corner with all the craziness Mom and Dad have planned." In the end, I agreed. Partly to support Brittany, and partly because I needed a few hours away from the hospital's recycled air and beeping monitors. Amanda encouraged me to go, saying the break would do me good. Saturday arrived, sunny and perfect for an outdoor wedding. I put on the one suit I owned, kissed Jake and Amanda goodbye, and drove to the exclusive country club where the ceremony and reception would be held. The extravagance was even worse than I'd imagined. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway. Flowers worth thousands of dollars adorned every surface. A string quartet played as guests in designer clothes mingled on the manicured lawn. I slipped into a seat at the back of the ceremony area, avoiding my parents who stood greeting guests near the front. The ceremony itself was brief but lavish, with Brittany looking beautiful but strangely subdued as she said her vows. At the reception, I continued to avoid my parents, making small talk with distant relatives who asked politely about my life, before moving on to more interesting conversations. I was about to leave when my father tapped a knife against his champagne glass, calling for everyone's attention. "Welcome, friends and family, to this joyous occasion," he began, his voice carrying across the elegant ballroom. "As father of the bride, I want to thank you all for joining us to celebrate Brittany and Tyler's special day." He continued with a speech about love and commitment, then transitioned to what was clearly his favorite part. "Some of you have commented on the splendor of today's celebration. I won't pretend it was inexpensive." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. "But nothing is too good for my little princess. $540,000 well spent. If you ask me." Gasps and murmurs spread through the room. Even by the standards of the wealthy guests, this was an obscene amount to announce publicly. My father beamed, clearly proud of the reaction. Something inside me snapped. Before I knew what I was doing, I was on my feet, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. $540,000 for a one-day party, I said, my voice carrying in the sudden silence. But $65,000 was too much to save your grandson's life. All heads turned toward me. My mother's face drained of color. My father's expression hardened. "Wilbur, this is neither the time nor the place," he said sharply. "When is the time, Dad? Jake is dying. Right now, while you're drinking champagne that costs more than a month of his hospital bills, my 4-year-old son is fighting for his life because you refuse to help him." Shocked whispers spread through the crowd. Many of the guests knew my parents had a grandson, though few had ever met Jake. "That's enough," my father said, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You're making a scene." "A scene?" I laughed bitterly. "You want to know what a scene is? A scene is watching your child scream in pain during treatments. A scene is telling a 4-year-old why he's losing his hair. A scene is begging your wealthy parents for help and being told that their daughter's wedding is more important than their grandson's life." Brittany had appeared at my side, her hand on my arm. "Wilbur, please," she whispered, but I could tell her heart wasn't in the request. Part of her wanted the truth exposed. "No, Brittany. I'm tired of the secrets and the pretending." I addressed the room again. "My son Jake has an aggressive form of leukemia. There's a treatment that could save him, but it costs $65,000 that our insurance won't cover. We've raised about $40,000, one small donation at a time, from teachers and nurses and regular people in our community. Meanwhile, my parents, who just spent over $500,000 on this wedding, refused to help. They said, and I quote, 'We've already allocated our finances for the year.'" Complete silence had fallen over the reception. My parents stood frozen, their public image crumbling before their eyes. "Wilbur, that's not exactly what happened," my mother finally said weakly. "It's exactly what happened," I countered. "You also suggested it was probably Amanda's genetic fault that Jake has cancer." As if that should matter. A tall, distinguished-looking man in his 60s stepped forward from the crowd. "Excuse me, but did you say your son has leukemia?" "What type, if I may ask?" "Acute lymphoblastic leukemia with the Philadelphia chromosome mutation," I replied automatically, having learned the terminology by heart. The man nodded thoughtfully. "And the treatment you're seeking? Is it the Pembroke protocol? The targeted immunotherapy trial?" I stared at him in surprise. "Yes. How did you know?" My name is Dr. Alan Pearson. I'm the Chief of Oncology at Boston Memorial and one of the developers of that protocol. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. I'd like to speak with you privately, if I may. In a daze, I followed Dr. Pearson to a quiet corner of the ballroom, aware of the murmurs spreading through the crowd behind us. My parents remained rooted to their spot, looking shell-shocked. Your son would be an excellent candidate for our trial, Dr. Pearson said without preamble. We've had remarkable success rates with children under 5 with that specific mutation. I know, I said, but we don't have the full $65,000 yet. Dr. Pearson waved his hand dismissively. That's the standard rate, yes. But as one of the program directors, I have some discretion in special cases. Given what I've just witnessed, I think we can make arrangements for Jake to begin treatment immediately, with a payment plan for whatever portion your fundraising doesn't cover. I stared at him, not quite processing his words. You mean, you can get Jake into the treatment program? Now? Without the full payment up front? That's exactly what I mean, Mr. Hartley. I'll call the hospital first thing Monday morning. In the meantime, here's my personal cell number. Have your wife text me Jake's patient information tonight, and I'll review his file. I felt my legs go weak with relief. Dr. Pearson, I don't know how to thank you. He smiled kindly. No thanks necessary. Children like Jake are why I became a doctor in the first place. He glanced over at my parents, who were now engaged in intense conversation with several concerned-looking guests, and perhaps this situation will help certain people reassess their priorities. I returned to the main reception area to find Brittany waiting anxiously. What did he say? When I told her about Dr. Pearson's offer, she threw her arms around me, unconcerned about wrinkling her wedding dress. Thank God, she whispered. Thank God. I should go, I said, suddenly exhausted. I need to tell Amanda. Brittany nodded. Go. And Wilbur, I'm sorry. About everything. As I headed for the exit, I passed my parents. They were surrounded by guests asking uncomfortable questions about their grandson. For the first time in my life, I saw my father look genuinely shamed. Wilbur, he called out as I walked by. We should talk about this. I stopped and looked him directly in the eye. I have nothing to say to you. I'm going back to the hospital to be with my son. The drive back to the hospital seemed to take both an eternity and no time at all. My mind was racing with what Dr. Pearson had said, with the hope that had appeared out of nowhere at my sister's wedding of all places. When I burst into Jake's hospital room, Amanda looked up in alarm from where she sat reading to our son. What happened? You're back early. We have a miracle, I said, and told her everything. For the first time in weeks, Amanda broke down in tears of relief. Jake, not understanding why his mother was crying, patted her hand with his small, pale one. Don't cry, Mommy, he said. It's okay. Amanda pulled him gently into her arms. Yes, baby, it's going to be okay. It really is. As I watched them, my phone began to buzz with text messages. My parents, attempting damage control. Brittany, offering additional support. And finally, Dr. Pearson, confirming he had received Jake's information from Amanda and was expediting his enrollment in the treatment program. In the space of a few hours, our desperate situation had been transformed. Not by my wealthy parents, who could have helped easily, but by a chance encounter with a compassionate doctor at a wedding I hadn't even wanted to attend. It seemed that sometimes, justice worked in mysterious ways. Jake began the experimental treatment protocol the following Wednesday. Dr. Pearson personally oversaw his care, explaining each step of the process to Amanda and me, with patience and clarity. The treatment would be aggressive, he warned us. There would be difficult days ahead. But the preliminary results for children with Jake's specific genetic markers were very promising. Think of it as a marathon, not a sprint, he advised. There will be setbacks along the way, but keep your eyes on the finish line. The first week was brutal. Jake's small body, already weakened by the disease, struggled with the powerful medications. He developed mouth sores that made eating painful. His remaining hair fell out completely. There were nights when he cried for hours, nothing we did bringing comfort. But slowly, incrementally, there were signs of improvement. His blood counts began to stabilize. The fevers became less frequent. His appetite returned, little by little. Throughout this time, the community support continued to grow. The GoFundMe reached $50,000, then $55,000. Local businesses held fundraising events. My students made Get Well cards that covered an entire wall of Jake's hospital room. My parents made several attempts to contact us. They left voicemails expressing concern about Jake's condition. They sent text messages asking to visit the hospital. They even tried coming to the pediatric ward once, but I had instructed the nurses not to allow them in. Brittany, on the other hand, became a regular visitor. She brought games and toys for Jake, sat with him when Amanda and I needed breaks, and even learned from the nurses how to help with his basic care. Her wedding gifts remained unopened in her apartment as she put her honeymoon on indefinite hold, much to Tyler's dismay. "He doesn't understand why I'm spending so much time here," she confided one afternoon as we shared a terrible hospital cafeteria coffee. "He keeps saying Jake isn't my responsibility." "What do you tell him?" I asked. "That Jake is family, and family is always our responsibility." She smiled sadly. "I'm not sure Tyler and I are going to make it, to be honest. This whole experience has changed me, made me see things differently." The treatment continued, week after grueling week. Dr. Pearson was encouraged by Jake's progress, but cautioned us against too much early optimism. "We're seeing good signs, but there's still a long road ahead." One evening in the 6th week of treatment, as Amanda was helping Jake with his dinner, there was a knock on the hospital room door. I opened it to find my father standing there, holding a large manila envelope. "Wilbur," he said, looking older and more uncertain than I'd ever seen him. "Please. Just 5 minutes." I stepped into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind me. "What do you want?" He held out the envelope. "This is a check for $65,000. For Jake's treatment." I stared at the envelope but didn't take it. "It's too late. Dr. Pearson has already arranged for Jake's care. Then use it for any additional expenses, or for your mortgage, or put it aside for Jake's future." My father's voice had a pleading quality I'd never heard before. "Please, son. Let us help." "You had your chance to help," I said quietly. "When it actually mattered, when we were desperate and afraid, you chose your party over Jake's life." "I was wrong," he admitted, the words seeming to physically pain him. "Your mother and I both were. We've realized that now. Because you were publicly humiliated? Because your friends are asking uncomfortable questions about why you wouldn't help your grandson?" He flinched. "That's not fair." "None of this has been fair," I replied. "Not to Jake, not to Amanda, not to me. We needed you, and you weren't there." I took the envelope and handed it back to him. "We don't need your money anymore. We don't need you." As I turned to go back into Jake's room, my father called out, "We're still his grandparents, Wilbur. We still love him." I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "Love isn't just words, Dad. It's actions. It's sacrifices. It's being there when it counts." I looked back at him, feeling a strange mix of pity and residual anger. "When you figure that out, really figure it out, maybe we can talk again." I didn't tell Amanda about my father's visit that night. There had been enough emotional turmoil already. Instead, I focused on the positive developments in Jake's treatment, on the incredible community support we'd received, and on the path forward. 2 months into the treatment, Dr. Pearson shared the news we'd been desperately hoping for. Jake's cancer was responding to the protocol. The leukemia cells in his bone marrow had decreased significantly. It wasn't remission yet, he cautioned, but it was a very promising sign. As Jake's condition improved, I found myself channeling my experiences into something constructive. I started a support group for parents of children with serious illnesses, meeting weekly in a conference room the hospital provided. We shared resources, advice, and most importantly, understanding that could only come from those who had walked the same difficult path. Amanda, too, found purpose in our ordeal. She began training to transfer to the pediatric oncology department, wanting to use her nursing skills to help other children like Jake. "This experience has changed me," she told me one night. "I want something good to come from it." Our fundraiser had eventually reached the full $65,000, allowing us to pay Dr. Pearson's program as agreed. But the generosity didn't stop there. People continued to donate. knowing that even with treatment covered, we faced years of follow-up care, medications, and recovery support for Jake. The extra funds allowed us to establish a foundation to help other families facing similar financial barriers to critical treatments. We named it Jake's Ladder, symbolizing the climb from illness to health that every child deserved a chance to make. 3 months after Jake's treatment began, I received a thick envelope in the mail. Inside was a check for $65,000 and a brief note, "For Jake's Ladder Foundation. No recognition requested or expected. Just help other children." It wasn't signed, but I recognized my mother's handwriting. After discussing it with Amanda, we decided to accept the donation for the foundation. Not for my parents' sake, but for the children it would help. I deposited the check without acknowledgement or response. By the 6-month mark, Jake was in partial remission. His strength was returning, his color improving. He still had regular treatments and frequent hospital visits. But he was able to return home, to sleep in his own bed, to begin the slow process of reclaiming his childhood. Throughout this period, my parents continued their attempts at reconciliation. Cards, messages, offers of financial support. I maintained a wall of silence, still raw from their initial rejection when we needed them most. Then one day, another envelope arrived. Inside was a simple invitation to dinner at their house with a handwritten note from my mother. "We understand if you say no. We don't deserve your forgiveness. But we miss you, all of you, and we'd like a chance to be better than we were." I showed it to Amanda, who studied it thoughtfully. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me is still so angry with them. But another part remembers they're your parents. And Jake's grandparents," she finished for me. I nodded. "Does that make me weak?" Amanda took my hand. "It makes you human. And maybe, just maybe, they've actually learned something from all this." After much consideration, I wrote back declining the dinner invitation but suggesting a short visit at our house instead. It would be on our territory, with clear boundaries and time limits. If they were sincere about wanting to change, they would accept our terms. They did. The visit was scheduled for the following Sunday afternoon. As the day approached, I found myself increasingly anxious. What would I say to them? How would Jake, who barely knew them, react? Had anything really changed? Or was this just another attempt to ease their social discomfort? Only time would tell. 5 years can change everything. Or nothing. Or something in between. Jake is 9 years old now. His leukemia has been in full remission for 4 years. He's in 3rd grade, loves soccer and video games, and only vaguely remembers his time in the hospital. The scar from his central line is fading. The memories are fading too, replaced by normal childhood experiences, school, friends, birthday parties. The ordinary miracles we once feared he might never know. I still teach science, but at the high school level now. I found my passion for education renewed through our ordeal. My perspective on what matters forever altered. Amanda completed her specialization in pediatric oncology and works with children facing the same battles Jake once fought. Her compassion, always her defining quality, has been tempered and deepened by personal experience. Jake's Ladder Foundation has helped 27 families access treatments their insurance wouldn't cover. 27 children given a chance they might otherwise have been denied. The foundation has grown beyond our initial expectations, with corporate sponsors and annual fundraising events. What began as a response to our personal tragedy has become a lifeline for others. And my parents? That's more complicated. That first visit 5 years ago was awkward and strained. They brought expensive toys for Jake, who accepted them politely, but without enthusiasm. They asked careful questions about his health, his interests, his school. They avoided any mention of money or the past, and we let that omission stand. For a first step, it seemed better to focus on the present. Over the months that followed, we allowed them limited, supervised visits. They sent birthday and Christmas gifts. They attended Jake's kindergarten graduation, sitting quietly in the back row. Small, cautious steps toward some new kind of relationship. Then my father had a heart attack. Not severe, but enough to shake him profoundly. During his recovery, something seemed to shift in both my parents. Their priorities realigned. They sold their oversized mansion and moved to a smaller home. My father stepped back from day-to-day management of the business, letting others take the lead. My mother started volunteering at a children's hospital. Were these changes genuine? I wanted to believe so, but remained wary. Trust, once broken so completely, doesn't easily mend. Brittany divorced Tyler 8 months after their wedding. The differences in their values, exposed during Jake's illness, proved irreconcilable. She joined the family business, but implemented new corporate giving programs focused on children's health initiatives. She and Amanda became unlikely friends, united by their love for Jake and their shared experience during his treatment. Dr. Pearson continued to oversee Jake's follow-up care, though he retired from full-time practice 2 years ago. He remains on the board of Jake's Ladder Foundation, his medical expertise and compassion guiding our work. Our community, which rallied so powerfully in our time of need, still supports the Foundation's events and fundraisers. The bonds formed during crisis have evolved into lasting connections, a network of caring that extends far beyond our immediate family. And today? Today brings the latest chapter in our complicated family story. The doorbell rings precisely at 2 o'clock. Jake, who was watching for their car, calls out, "They're here!" I open the front door to find my parents standing on the porch. They look older, of course. My father's heart attack left him thinner, more fragile. My mother's hair has gone completely gray. They hold hands, something I rarely saw when I was growing up. "Wilbur," my father says simply. "Come in," I reply, stepping aside. Jake appears beside me. "Grandpa, Grandma, did you bring the photo albums you promised?" My mother smiles, lifting a tote bag. "All the old family photos I could find, just as requested for your school project." Jake leads them to the living room where Amanda is setting out coffee and the cookies she and Jake baked that morning. There's an ease to his interaction with them that still sometimes surprises me. Children are remarkably adaptable, remarkably forgiving. The adults are less so. Though we've established a civil relationship over the years, there remains an invisible barrier between us. A hesitation, a wariness. Some wounds heal completely. Others leave scars that forever change the landscape. As Jake and my mother begin sorting through old photographs, my father asks if we can speak privately. Amanda catches my eye, a silent question. I nod reassuringly, and my father and I step out onto the back deck. For a moment, we stand in silence, looking out at the yard where Jake's swing set stands alongside the basketball hoop he recently asked for. Signs of a normal childhood, of health and future possibilities. "I've been thinking a lot lately," my father finally says, "about time and how little of it we really have, about choices and consequences." I wait, letting him find his way through whatever he needs to say. "I failed you, Wilbur." Failed Jake. Failed the most basic test of what it means to be a parent, a grandparent. He turns to look at me directly. "There's no excuse for what your mother and I did." "None." "No," I agree quietly. "There isn't. I don't expect forgiveness. I've come to understand that some things can't be undone, only lived with." He takes a deep breath. "But I want you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret my choices, that I don't feel ashamed when I remember kneeling in our living room, begging for help for your son." His voice breaks slightly on the last words, and I'm surprised to feel a tightness in my own throat. "The foundation you and Amanda created," he continues after regaining his composure, "it's extraordinary, giving other families what we denied you." "It's not about you," I say, needing to make this clear. "It never was." "I know, and that's part of what humbles me most. Your capacity to turn personal pain into something that helps others." He hesitates, then adds, "You're a better man than I ever was, Wilbur. A better father than I ever was." The words hang in the air between us, unexpected and weighty. I think of all the years I spent seeking my father's approval, his recognition. How ironic that it comes now, after I've learned to live without it. "Thank you for allowing us some place in Jake's life," he says. "It's more than we deserve." I consider my response carefully. Jake deserves to know his grandparents, to make his own decisions about that relationship as he gets older. I pause, then add, "But there are boundaries. There always will be." My father nods. "I understand. And we respect that." We're just grateful for whatever time you allow us. We return to the living room, where Jake is excitedly showing my mother a science project award he recently won. The afternoon passes quietly, with conversations about safe topics. Jake's school, Amanda's work, the foundation's upcoming fundraiser. As they prepare to leave, my mother hugs Jake tightly, then tentatively offers a hug to me as well. I accept it briefly, still maintaining some emotional distance. After they drive away, Amanda wraps her arms around my waist from behind. "You okay?" "Yeah," I say, surprising myself with how true it feels. I think I am. Later that night, I receive an email notification of a donation to Jake's Ladder Foundation, $1 million, from an anonymous donor. The timing leaves little doubt about the source. I show Amanda the notification. "What do you think?" She considers it thoughtfully. "I think it will help a lot of children." "It doesn't change what happened," I say. "No," she agrees. "Nothing can change the past. But it might help shape the future." As I watch Jake sleep that night, his face peaceful in the glow of his nightlight, I reflect on the journey we've taken, the terror of his diagnosis, the betrayal by those who should have helped without question, the unexpected support from strangers and acquaintances, the treatments, the recovery, the return to normal life. And I think about forgiveness. Not the easy kind that pretends harm never occurred, but the complex, nuanced kind that acknowledges the pain while allowing space for growth and change. The kind that sets boundaries while recognizing our shared humanity. The kind that prioritizes healing over vengeance. I haven't fully forgiven my parents. Maybe I never will, completely. But I've learned that relationships aren't all or nothing propositions. That it's possible to maintain necessary distance while still allowing connection. That people can change, even people who've hurt us deeply, and those changes can be genuine even if they don't erase past actions. Most importantly, I've learned that our capacity for love and compassion grows stronger, not weaker, through adversity. That communities can rally around those in need in ways that restore faith in humanity. That priorities clarify with crystal sharpness when faced with the possible loss of what matters most. Jake's illness nearly broke us. Financially, emotionally, spiritually. But in rebuilding, we created something stronger than before. Not just our family, but our connections to others. Our purpose, our understanding of what truly matters. Money can't buy the things that saved us. Not community. Not compassion. Not the fierce, unbending love that carried us through our darkest days. These are the true measures of wealth, the real inheritance we'll leave our son. What would you do if faced with the choice my parents made? Would you choose the extravagant wedding or the life-saving treatment? What does family really mean to you? I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments below. And if our story touched you in some way, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find meaning in our journey. Thank you for listening, and may you never have to discover what matters most by almost losing it.